The man who can delay pleasure is dangerous for one reason: his future cannot be bought cheaply. Most people can be controlled with comfort, attention, food, sex, praise, distraction, or the promise of immediate relief. Offer them something now, and they will sacrifice what they wanted later. But when you can feel desire without obeying it, a strange shift begins. Your impulses stop negotiating your destiny. Other people lose leverage. Time starts working for you instead of against you. And the deeper truth is darker. The ability to wait does not just build discipline, it changes who controls your life. I learned this by watching people ruin things they claimed mattered to them. A man says he wants financial freedom, then spends money because he had a bad day. He says he wants respect, then sends another message because silence makes him uncomfortable. He wants a better body, but one craving becomes permission to abandon the promise he made that morning. He wants control over his life, yet his mood can change the entire direction of his evening. The problem isn't pleasure. The problem is that pleasure becomes a button. And whoever knows which button you cannot resist can begin predicting you. That's where this becomes Machiavellian. Control rarely begins with someone ordering you around. Sometimes it begins with someone discovering what makes you impatient. A compliment, an invitation, attention from a particular person, the fear of missing out, the need to answer immediately when insulted. Once your hunger becomes visible, your behavior becomes easier to influence. Think about the person who keeps you uncertain, then suddenly gives you attention. That attention feels more valuable because you waited for it, so you overlook behavior you normally wouldn't tolerate. You think you're chasing affection, but perhaps you're reacting to relief. And that distinction changes everything, because delaying pleasure isn't simply refusing temptation. It's learning to sit inside discomfort long enough to discover what the discomfort is trying to make you surrender. Your money, your dignity, your patience, your position, sometimes even your future. And once you notice that, you start seeing temptation differently. The most expensive pleasures in your life rarely arrive looking dangerous. They arrive looking deserved. Number 2, the trap of deserved pleasure. The word deserved is where people quietly lose control because the mind becomes incredibly persuasive once it wants relief. You worked hard, so you deserve to spend. You felt lonely, so you deserve to call the person who keeps disrespecting you. You were angry, so you deserve to say what you know will damage the relationship. You've been disciplined all week, so one night of excess should not matter. Maybe it doesn't. But I started noticing that the most destructive decisions were rarely made by people who believed they were destroying themselves. They believed they were rewarding themselves. That is the trap. Desire almost never walks into your mind and announces, "I am about to steal something from your future." It speaks like an ally. It tells you that you have earned this moment, that tomorrow will repair whatever tonight costs, that one exception means nothing. And sometimes that is true. The danger begins when exceptions become the method through which your impulses negotiate with your standards. Every time discomfort produces an immediate reward, your mind learns a simple equation. Pressure means escape. Boredom means distraction. Rejection means chasing. Stress means spending. Insecurity means showing off. Anger means reacting. Soon, you are not choosing pleasure anymore. You are using pleasure to avoid states you have never learned to tolerate. That makes you predictable. I have seen this in rooms where nothing dramatic happened. Someone receives a message that bruises his ego, and suddenly he cannot concentrate until he answers. Another man watches someone else receive recognition and immediately feels the need to announce his own success. A person feels ignored for 3 hours and begins revealing more, explaining more, offering more, simply to restore the attention he had yesterday. From the outside, these actions look unrelated. Underneath them is the same weakness, the inability to let an uncomfortable feeling exist without immediately doing something to remove it. And this is why strategic patience has always mattered more than it appears. The patient person gets information that the impatient person destroys. Silence reveals who reaches back. Waiting reveals whether an opportunity is real or merely urgent. Delaying a purchase reveals whether you wanted the object or the emotional rush of acquiring it. Refusing to answer while angry reveals which words still matter after your pride cools down. Time exposes motives. That is one of its most useful qualities, but only the person who can wait long enough gets to see what time reveals. Most people interrupt the experiment too early. They chase before they learn who would have returned. They speak before they learn who was bluffing. They surrender before they discover that the pressure was temporary. And once you understand that, delaying pleasure stops looking like punishment. It becomes a way of gathering information. The question is no longer, can I resist this? The more dangerous question becomes, what will I learn if I don't react yet? Number 3.
What waiting reveals.
The first thing waiting reveals is whether you actually wanted something or whether you simply wanted the feeling of getting it. That difference is more important than most people realize. I've watched men become obsessed with people they barely liked, simply because those people became difficult to reach. I've watched someone spend money he didn't have, not because he needed the object, but because buying it made him feel powerful for 10 minutes. I've watched people argue for hours over things they stopped caring about the moment they finally won. That should tell you something uncomfortable about desire. Sometimes the object is not the real target. Sometimes your mind is chasing relief, validation, victory, or proof that you still matter. Delay exposes that. Give an impulse enough time, and it begins losing its costume. Attraction can turn into wounded pride. Ambition can reveal itself as envy. Urgency can reveal itself as fear. What looked like love can sometimes be panic at the thought of being replaced. This is why a person who cannot wait is so easy to manipulate. Create urgency around him and his judgment changes. Tell him the offer disappears tonight. Make him feel another person might take his place. Withdraw attention just long enough to make him uncertain. Let him believe everybody else is moving faster. Suddenly, he starts making decisions he would reject if he felt calm. This is not because he is stupid. It is because urgency narrows the mind. He stops asking, "Is this good for me?" and starts asking, "What if I lose it?" Those are completely different questions. Machiavellian thinking pays close attention to this because control often hides inside timing. The person who determines when you must answer, when you must decide, when you must prove yourself, and when you must act can quietly shape the decision before you even notice. But the moment you create space between pressure and action, something changes. You regain the ability to observe. Imagine receiving a message designed to provoke you. Your first instinct is to defend yourself immediately, but instead, you leave the phone on the table. An hour passes. The anger changes shape. Suddenly you notice something you missed. The other person was not asking for truth. They were trying to pull you into a reaction. Had you answered instantly, they would have controlled the rhythm. By waiting, you forced the situation to reveal itself. This is why patience is more than discipline. Patience protects perception. It keeps temporary emotion from pretending to be permanent truth. And once you learn to delay the pleasure of reacting, explaining, buying, chasing, proving, and winning immediately, you begin discovering how many decisions were never really yours. If that realization hits home, comment, "I choose before I react." Because from here, the question becomes darker. If so much of your behavior can be controlled through urgency, who in your life has already learned how to use your impatience against you? Number 4.
The people who profit from your impatience.
Most manipulation does not look like manipulation while it is happening. That is what makes it effective. It looks like urgency, affection, opportunity, disappointment, pressure, or concern. Someone says, "I need an answer now." Someone else suddenly becomes distant when you stop giving them what they want. A manager creates panic around a decision so nobody has time to question it. A partner threatens withdrawal because they know silence makes you uncomfortable. A friend keeps testing how quickly you will abandon your own plans to solve theirs. None of these situations automatically means someone is plotting against you, but the pattern matters. Whenever another person benefits from making you impatient, you should become slower. I learned that the people who understand your cravings often understand your behavior before you do. If they know you cannot tolerate being ignored, attention becomes leverage. If they know you need to be seen as generous, guilt becomes leverage. If they know you hate conflict, disappointment becomes leverage. If they know you cannot stand losing, competition becomes leverage. The mechanism is simple. They do not always have to force you. They only have to touch the part of you that demands immediate relief. Then you begin doing the work for them. You explain yourself when silence would have protected you. You agree too quickly because saying no feels uncomfortable. You reveal information because uncertainty makes you nervous. You give another chance before the other person has changed anything. You buy, chase, apologize, react, promise, or surrender because waiting feels worse than the cost of acting. This is where delayed gratification becomes something much larger than saving money or avoiding junk food. It becomes protection against emotional bargaining. Imagine someone pulls away from you after you set a boundary. Your first impulse may be to fix the distance. That impulse feels like love, but sometimes it is simply your nervous system demanding the old comfort back. If you rush to restore peace, you teach the other person something important. Withdrawal works on you. They may not even consciously recognize it, but the relationship learns the pattern. Pressure creates compliance. Now imagine the opposite. You feel the discomfort and do nothing reckless. You remain respectful. You do not punish them, beg them, or perform indifference. You simply refuse to purchase temporary peace with long-term self-respect. That changes the entire power structure. The other person must now decide whether they actually value the relationship or only valued your predictability. This is the part people misunderstand about patience. Waiting is not passive when you are using the time to observe incentives. It can be one of the most active forms of intelligence. While everyone else is rushing to remove discomfort, you are asking who benefits from your reaction, what pattern your reaction reinforces, and what becomes visible if you refuse to move on command. That question alone can save you from years of repeating the same relationships under different names. Because once someone realizes your emotions cannot easily be converted into immediate obedience, they are forced to deal with the part of you that cannot be bribed by relief. And that is when another problem appears. The harder you become to control from the outside, the more clearly you begin seeing how often you have been controlling yourself with the same tricks. Number 5. The bargains you make with yourself. The most sophisticated manipulator in your life may not be another person. It may be the version of you that knows exactly which excuse will work. That version knows when you are tired, lonely, angry, embarrassed, bored, insecure, or disappointed. It knows how to turn one uncomfortable feeling into permission. You've had a hard week. You can start tomorrow. Just this once. You deserve something. Nobody will know. I used to think self-control was simply a battle between discipline and temptation, but that explanation is too simple. What actually happens is negotiation. Your present self sits across the table from your future self and tries to make a deal. The present self gets the pleasure now. The future self gets the consequences later. And because the future self is silent, invisible, and unable to argue back, the deal almost always looks fair in the moment. That is why people can repeatedly sabotage goals they genuinely care about, without feeling irrational while they are doing it. The decision feels reasonable because the cost has been pushed forward in time. Tonight's comfort is visible. Next month's regret is not. The missed workout seems small. The money spent seems replaceable. The message sent in anger feels justified. The hour lost scrolling looks harmless. But the future is rarely destroyed by one dramatic decision. It is traded away in small negotiations where immediate relief keeps winning by a narrow margin. And this is where the idea becomes more serious than pleasure. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you are building evidence about who is in command. Every time you break one casually, you are also building evidence. That evidence becomes identity. If you repeatedly tell yourself you will stop at midnight and continue until 3, your mind learns that your deadlines are negotiable. If you promise to save and spend whenever emotion rises, your plans become suggestions. If you decide not to contact someone and reach for the phone the moment loneliness appears, your feelings learn that they can overrule your judgment. Eventually, the problem is no longer one bad habit. The problem is that part of you stops believing your own commands. Think about how dangerous that is. A man who cannot trust his own word has to rely on motivation every morning. He has to feel ready. He has to feel inspired. He has to hope temptation arrives when he is strong. That is not freedom. That is dependence on internal weather. The disciplined man creates something different. He makes fewer promises, but when he makes one, he treats it like an order that survives mood. Not because he is trying to become emotionless, but because he understands that feelings are temporary advisors, not permanent rulers. There is another hidden cost here. Constantly giving yourself immediate pleasure makes ordinary life feel increasingly dull. When every quiet moment is filled, boredom becomes unbearable. When every craving is answered, restraint begins feeling like deprivation. When every difficult emotion is escaped, discomfort starts feeling like danger. Then the threshold for satisfaction keeps moving. What once felt rewarding becomes normal, so you need more stimulation, more attention, more spending, more excitement, more proof. This is how comfort can quietly become dependence. Not because pleasure is evil, but because anything you must have immediately gains authority over you. Machiavellian thinking would recognize the problem instantly. Dependency creates leverage. Usually, we think of leverage as something another person holds over us. But habits can hold leverage too. Devices can, approval can, anger can, lust can. Even the need to be entertained can begin dictating what you do with your time. So I started using a different question whenever desire became loud, not, "Do I deserve this?" That question is too easy to manipulate. I ask, what am I teaching myself if I obey this feeling right now? Suddenly, the decision changes. One unnecessary purchase becomes training. One reactive message becomes training. 1 hour of distraction becomes training. You are always rehearsing a relationship with yourself. Either impulse gives the orders and intention negotiates, or intention gives the orders and impulse is allowed to complain without being obeyed. If this is the point where you recognize your own pattern, comment, "My future gets a vote." Because once your future finally gets a voice in the room, something surprising happens. You do not merely become better at saying no. You begin becoming selective about what deserves a yes. And that is where delayed pleasure turns into something much more powerful than restraint. It becomes the ability to choose which desires are worth building a life around. Number 6. The desire that deserves your life. Most men think discipline means killing desire. I think that is why so many eventually rebel against their own routines. They treat every pleasure like an enemy, every craving like evidence of weakness, every enjoyable thing like something that must be punished. Then one bad night arrives and the entire structure collapses. But that is not mastery. Mastery is not becoming a man who wants nothing. It is becoming a man who can tell the difference between a desire that consumes his future and a desire worth giving his future to. That distinction changed the way I think about ambition. There are desires that become weaker once satisfied, and there are desires that become stronger through sacrifice. The first kind says, "Give me something now and I will leave you alone." The second says, "Build me slowly and I will change who you become." One wants the meal, the other wants the body. One wants the expensive symbol, the other wants financial independence. One wants attention from a particular person tonight. The other wants a life in which affection never requires humiliation. One wants to win the argument. The other wants a reputation for being impossible to drag into foolish conflict. Both kinds can feel intense, but they lead in opposite directions. The difficulty is that immediate desire speaks louder. The future rarely screams. It whispers. That is why so many people betray larger ambitions for smaller pleasures without even realizing a trade has occurred. I once watched a man receive an opportunity he had talked about for years. More responsibility, more money, more influence. The strange part was that he almost destroyed it within weeks, not because he lacked intelligence, but because his older rewards were still stronger than his newer ambitions. He wanted the position, but he also wanted every late night, every impulsive purchase, every argument, every distraction, every invitation. He believed success meant adding something to his life. He had not realized that serious ambition often demands subtraction. That is the hidden price nobody likes discussing. The future you claim to want may require you to disappoint the version of yourself that still expects access to every pleasure. It may require leaving rooms earlier, ignoring conversations that feed your ego, letting an insult die unanswered, watching other people enjoy things you could afford but have chosen not to buy. Sometimes it means becoming temporarily boring in the eyes of people whose lives you do not want. And this is where status becomes complicated. People often spend their future trying to look successful in the present. They purchase signals before they possess substance. They want the watch before the wealth, the image before the competence, the admiration before the achievement. Appearance matters in Machiavellian life, but there is a dangerous difference between controlling appearance strategically and becoming enslaved to it. If you need to look powerful at all times, anyone capable of threatening that image can provoke you. If you need to look wealthy, insecurity can empty your bank account. If you need to look desired, rejection can make you chase people you would otherwise walk past. The appearance you are using to influence others begins influencing you. That is one reason delayed pleasure quietly changes social power. You stop needing every room to understand you immediately. You can allow someone to underestimate you without rushing to correct them. Think about how unusual that is. Most people cannot tolerate a false impression when it bruises their ego. Someone assumes they are less successful, less connected, less intelligent, less desirable, and suddenly they start revealing information. They mention money, names, achievements, plans. They expose their hand because the pleasure of correcting the other person becomes irresistible. But what did they gain? A few seconds of validation. What did they lose? Information asymmetry. Sometimes being underestimated is useful. It allows people to reveal how they behave when they believe you have nothing they need. You see who becomes dismissive, who interrupts, who becomes arrogant, who stops performing kindness. Later, when circumstances change, you remember. The impatient man purchased respect immediately by revealing himself. The patient man allowed disrespect to become information. This principle reaches far beyond money or attention. Delay changes the quality of your decisions because it lets consequences enter the room before action does. When anger says, "Destroy him now," time asks, "And what happens after?" When lust says, "Take the risk," time asks what this costs tomorrow morning. When ego says, "Prove yourself," time asks whether the person watching deserves access to your proof. This is strategic restraint, not suppression for its own sake, but refusing to pay a permanent price for a temporary emotional reward. And there is a paradox here. The more capable you become of waiting, the more pleasure you can actually enjoy, because enjoyment is no longer mixed with helplessness. You can spend without needing to spend. Rest without becoming addicted to rest. Love without begging for reassurance. Eat without being controlled by appetite. Celebrate without requiring celebration to continue forever. Pleasure becomes something you choose rather than something you obey. That freedom is far more satisfying than constant indulgence, because now the pleasure belongs to you. You do not belong to it. But there is one test that exposes whether this transformation is real. It does not appear when life is calm and your plans are working. It appears when you are forced to watch someone else receive the reward you decided to wait for. That is when envy enters the room, and envy has destroyed more patience than temptation ever could. Number 7. When someone else gets there first. Envy is where patience is truly tested, because waiting feels noble only until someone else starts winning in front of you. You can save money calmly until a friend buys the car you wanted. You can work quietly until someone less skilled gets promoted. You can stay disciplined until the person who rejected you appears happy with somebody else. Suddenly, the future you were building feels too slow. Your plan has not changed, but your emotions have. And that is the danger. Comparison can make a good strategy feel like failure simply because someone else received a visible reward first. I have watched intelligent people destroy years of progress because they could not tolerate being temporarily behind. They changed careers too early, spent money to look successful, entered relationships they did not want, took risks they did not understand, announced plans before they were ready, all because somebody nearby created a clock inside their head. The strange thing is, the other person may not even know they are competing, yet their progress becomes pressure, and pressure makes people abandon timing. This is why envy is not just wanting what another person has. Envy is sometimes the fear that their success says something humiliating about your pace. That fear becomes dangerous because status is public while preparation is private. Nobody sees the nights you refuse distraction. Nobody applauds the purchase you did not make. Nobody notices the argument you chose not to enter. Nobody sees the opportunity you rejected because the terms were wrong. Restraint produces very little immediate evidence. Meanwhile, another person posts the promotion, the trip, the relationship, the house, the victory. Their reward is visible, your discipline is invisible, and human beings are easily seduced by what can be seen. This is where appearance versus reality becomes personal. You may begin copying someone's visible outcome without understanding the invisible structure underneath it. You see the car, not the debt, the title, not the politics, the marriage, not the private misery, the sudden success, not the 10 years before it, or perhaps their success is completely real. That can be even harder because now you have no comforting explanation. They simply reached something before you did. What then? This is where most people reveal whether they actually want the future they claim to want or whether they only want to feel ahead of somebody. I learned to ask a brutal question whenever comparison started changing my behavior. If nobody could see this decision, would I still make it? That question exposes a remarkable amount. Would you still buy it if nobody knew you owned it? Would you still pursue that person if there were nobody to impress? Would you still accept the job if the title disappeared? Would you still enter the argument if nobody were watching? Sometimes the answer is yes, good. Then the desire may actually belong to you. But sometimes the answer becomes uncomfortable. You discover that you were not pursuing pleasure, you were purchasing position. And status purchased impulsively is expensive because it often requires you to surrender the very resources that could have produced real independence later. There is another trap. When someone gets ahead, the ego wants to accelerate. Acceleration feels productive, but speed can destroy information. A man sees his competitor making money and jumps into an investment he barely understands. Someone watches friends getting married and chooses a partner because being alone suddenly feels like losing. A creator sees another channel explode and abandons the style he was patiently developing to imitate whatever worked this week. The surface changes, but the psychology is identical. Their decisions are no longer being governed by their own incentives. Someone else's timeline has taken control. Machiavellian strategy would consider this a serious vulnerability. If a rival can make you alter your plan merely by displaying success, they do not have to defeat you directly. Your reaction does part of the work. This does not mean ignoring competition. Competition contains information. Watch what works. Study positioning. Learn where your assumptions were wrong. Adapt when reality proves you wrong. Machiavellian flexibility matters because stubborn patience can become stupidity. Waiting is not sacred. Sometimes the wise move is to change direction immediately. The difference is whether you are adapting because evidence changed or because your ego became uncomfortable. One is strategy, the other is emotional obedience. Imagine two men climbing the same mountain by different paths. One reaches a visible ridge first. The second man sees him above and panics. Instead of staying on the safer route, he begins climbing straight upward because he wants to erase the distance. For a while, he moves faster. Then the ground changes. Now he is stuck somewhere he never intended to be. That is how comparison destroys long-term plans. It makes speed feel more important than direction. So when someone else receives what you want, do not immediately ask, "How do I catch them?" Ask what their success actually teaches you. Maybe it reveals a weakness in your plan. Maybe it proves the reward is possible. Maybe it exposes that you never wanted the reward itself, only the status attached to it. Or maybe it teaches the hardest lesson of all. Someone can be ahead of you without anything being wrong with your life. That realization creates a strange kind of freedom. You no longer have to turn another person's victory into evidence against yourself. You can congratulate them without surrendering your timing. You can study them without becoming them. You can remain hungry without becoming hurried. And once envy loses the ability to accelerate you, another form of control begins disappearing with it. The need to know exactly when your reward will arrive. Because delaying pleasure is difficult, but delaying pleasure without any guarantee of when the payoff comes is where patience becomes something far more powerful. Number 8. The power of uncertain rewards. The hardest form of patience is not waiting when you know the reward is coming. It is waiting when there is no guarantee at all. Anyone can endure discomfort when the finish line is visible. The real test begins when effort feels invisible, progress is slow, and nobody can promise that the sacrifice will pay off exactly the way you imagined. This is where most people break. They do not always quit because the goal became impossible. They quit because uncertainty became emotionally expensive. I have seen people abandon good plans simply because they could no longer tolerate not knowing. They leave a promising path too early, return to old relationships because loneliness feels more certain than waiting for something healthier, spend savings because a distant future feels less real than tonight, or accept bad opportunities because at least the answer is immediate. Certainty is seductive. Even painful certainty can feel safer than an unknown future. That is why manipulation often works through forced deadlines, artificial urgency, and emotional pressure. The message is always the same: decide now or lose everything. But the man who can live inside uncertainty without panicking becomes difficult to rush. He does not need every question answered before he can remain disciplined. This does not mean blindly waiting forever. That would be foolish. Patience without observation becomes denial. The deeper skill is learning to separate uncertainty from evidence. Sometimes nothing is guaranteed, but the evidence still says continue. Other times you are waiting because admitting failure would hurt your ego. The disciplined mind can tell the difference. It asks, is the process improving? Are my actions producing useful signals? Has reality changed, or am I simply uncomfortable? That distinction protects you from two opposite mistakes: quitting too early and staying too long. Think about how much of life depends on this: building a reputation, learning a difficult skill, saving money, repairing your health, growing a business, becoming trustworthy. None of these rewards arrive on command. You act today and receive the proof later, sometimes much later. This delay creates a strange psychological divide. The impatient person needs motivation from results. The patient person learns to take motivation from alignment. He can finish a day satisfied because he behaved according to the future he wants, even if the future did not reward him that day. That is a powerful shift. You stop asking life to constantly reassure you. You no longer need applause after every sacrifice. You do not need immediate evidence that every disciplined choice was worth it. You become capable of moving through periods where nothing seems to happen without mistaking silence for failure. And that is where control over your future becomes real. Not because you can predict everything, but because uncertainty no longer has the authority to make decisions for you. Once that happens, pleasure loses one of its strongest weapons, the promise of immediate certainty. And from there, the final battle is no longer between you and temptation. It is between the person you are today and the identity you are slowly becoming.